I might as well just also say a couple of things about the achievement piece. I mean, what I'm trying to do in there is not only to show, especially younger people, the futility of a life based on achievement, but to say, look, there are good ways of understanding achievement too. I mean, the piece does not say you ought to do nothing with your life and achievement is worthless and it's a waste of time. It doesn't say that, but it says, you know, there are ways of thinking about it and that are better for your soul, frankly. One of them is to think about your desire to achieve as being inspired by a vision of the good. So that if, let's say you want to be a professional musician, well, why do you want to do that? Well, you could say, because I want to be famous, or you could say, because I want to achieve the excellence and beauty that, say, Alfred Brendel, wonderful pianist, achieves in his Haydn sonatas. That's what I want to do. I want to do something on that order. I recognize that there is a beauty, there is a goodness in that activity, and I want to do it too. So that to me is a very healthy way of thinking about achievement. The other is one other way of thinking about achievement is also to say, well, it's not just about what I do through hard work and perseverance. It's also a kind of discernment of my own gifts. Let's say, you know, whoever you are, you're born with gifts. The discernment of those gifts is very important, first of all, but it's also a way of saying whatever achievement I achieve, whatever I do it with my life, it's not wholly mine. It's actually given to me by God, so that I have certain gifts that I can choose, if I can discern them, then to make actual. So those are two much more positive ways, I think, of thinking about achievement. And then ultimately, I make the argument that in the highest things, you end up not thinking about yourself. So that once you become excellent at something, whether that's teaching or writing or being a tax attorney or being a doctor, you're actually looking for the good of other people and not yourself. So that your activity isn't about you and how great you are, but it's rather about how can I make the lives of others better and encourage them in their pursuits. So I think there are lots of positive ways of thinking about achievement, but it's just that we get caught up in the competitive nature of it, and it's very easy to have that happen.
Right. So it's not that achievement or utility in and of themselves are bad, but if they're the highest end all the time, then we've gone a little too far. I also have students read a great book. I've led several reading groups on a book called Genuine Friendship by Philip Halfaker, and students get a lot out of that. I think C.S. Lewis is another great go-to to learn about friendship. His book, The Four Loves, was one that I also read in a reading group, a real classic. And of course, his essay that you and I have both written on, Learning in Wartime, addresses this very key point that from a faith perspective, kind of the good that we do through our academic life is really secondary. The primary thing we're doing is trying to conform our minds to the good that God wants to come, and all of the effort. And certainly, believe me, I always tell people, if you want to do a PhD, get prepared to feel totally useless, because most of what you do ends up in the trash bin. I mean, I wrote about this in my article, Pruning the Mind in Life of a Crisis, in the Hedgehog review. It's extremely humbling to try to write an original piece of scholarship, because most of what you write is trash, literally in the trash bin. But somehow, magically, eventually something comes through. And so that's when you realize that the best we can do with our minds is strive and try to achieve, but also be open to that mystery and to that grace. And as I think Lewis really pushes us to think, to not identify the core of who we are with what we achieve. That's the point you're trying to make. It's about, in your core identity, is it your CV? And I think for most people it's not, but it's easy to slip into this habit. And that habit then affects the way we approach learning. It affects the way we are in the classroom. It affects friendships.